Hi, it's Rachel Maldonado,
And I am Lieutenant Colonel Steve Murray.
and we are talking about command presence. Steve, what is it?
That's a loaded question. So let's start with, in any leadership position, you have what's called presence, right? You have a physical presence, you have for lack of a better word, a mental presence, and then you have an emotional presence. And in every organization, especially, and this term's used primarily in the military, when you're in a combat arms unit, everybody in that unit is looking to you as a commander to set the tone for the unit. And sometimes you do that through just being calm, cool, and collect in a very tense situation. Sometimes you do that being very focused and dedicated. Other times it's just being present in the room. And in every situation where you're in a leadership position, the key to success, at least in my mind, the key to success in every one of those is keeping a level head, especially when things around you are deteriorating or blowing up. Usually, and I use this on my situation reports a lot, the calmest person in the room wins the argument. There's a reason why I say that. And several instances of that. Probably one of the best examples of command presence was General Carter Ham in the desert. There was several instances where we were taking mortar fire, literally 100, 200 rounds a day. It's very disconcerting for not only the leadership team, but for everybody in the operations or in the forward operating base. And I'll never forget, it was probably 6 o'clock in the evening where we were setting up to do just a daily operational brief. And we had a bunch of rounds come in and actually hit the building we were in. And I'll never forget that General Ham sat there as calm and as cool as he could be and literally said, "Are we ready to get on with the brief?" He didn't say anything else. He didn't show any emotion. He just sat there and said, "Ready to get on with the brief." And I can tell you that was the best example of leadership I've ever seen. Another instance was we were down at Diamondback, which was the Mosul airfield. And we were in one of the chow halls, which was a tent. And we were taking mortar fire. And I'll never forget, the chief of staff was sitting there. And he said, "We get mortar fire every day. But this cherry cobbler, we don't get every day. I'm going to sit here until I'm done with my cherry cobbler. I don't care what the enemy does." And you could see the calming effect it had on everybody around him, because everybody's like, "Okay, let's just go back to work." There's so many instances of that. And a lot of the presence that people associate with good leaders is usually a calming presence, as in, and part of it's telling yourself and being confident that you're not only in a leadership position, but you're making the right choices. And you can't dwell on the things that you do wrong until you're out of the situation, you're out of the AO, and you have time to reflect on them. I think that's a big part of it. The other part of it too is remembering that when people are looking up to you, and I routinely get reminded of this now, that even though I don't like what I'm doing, people are still counting on me to do the right thing. So it still behooves me to put my best foot forward, which is the other side of this. You always have to bring your A game. You never show up with your B game. You never show up emotional. Everybody does, right? But the good leaders can push that to the side and focus on the mission at hand. And it's not, I'm not saying to compartmentalize, because that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you know that's going on, but you focus on what's in front of you. And you get back to figuring out what your emotions are after you've accomplished the mission. That's a big part of it. The last piece of it is, anytime you deal with an organization, especially when you're dealing with an organization that's in strife or struggle, change is very hard for a lot of organizations. The change is something that most organizations can't do very well. And there's a myriad of examples. I'm going to use Elon Musk as one of them. When Tesla was first standing up, there's several instances where Musk was literally up all night working on cars to get cars off the production line because he wanted his company to be successful. And if you ask anybody from Tesla at that time period, they will all say the same thing. It was probably one of the best examples of leadership I've ever seen. Just his presence alone was motivating enough to keep everybody dialed into the mission. And that's the point of the game. The point of the game is to keep everybody focused on the end state that you're trying to reach in the mission. It may not be, a combat mission, but there's a lot of things that are going on in everyday business and everyday life that need dedicated focus and presence. And you can't say enough about physical presence. Sometimes just being in the room is enough. Other times it's being in the room and providing direction when there's chaos. It's other times it's being calm, cool, and collect and bringing moderation and mediation to conflict. That's command presence. It's not this overarching, I'm going to stand up and puff out my chest and talk loud. That's not command presence. That's just being upfront. Command presence is knowing when to interject, when to stand back, when to moderate, when to mediate, and when to influence. And a lot of times, if you talk to, especially combat arms officers, senior officers, they'll tell you the same thing, that their job is to issue guidance, follow the plan, or at least stay on a plan, issue guidance and get out of the way. And that's literally what, as a battalion commander, I did. I issued my guidance, I got out of the way, and I let my people do the work. And I stepped in and mediated when I had to. And sometimes that meant I was very direct. Other times that meant I was very indirect. It just depends on the situation. But part of reading the situation is being checked in enough to what's going on to be able to make that decision. Most people don't even think about it that way. They think about, well, I have to resolve this. Not necessarily. In fact, I remember one time I was at Pacific Command. I was working in a Navy headquarters, and I had my whole team of Army cyber experts with me. And one of my senior NCOs and one of the Navy senior NCOs were going at it. And this Lieutenant Colonel, Navy Lieutenant Colonel, was a commander, looked at me and said, "Colonel, aren't you going to step into that?" I'm like, "Nope." He's like, "Really?" I'm like, "Nope. Let them have at it. This is what NCOs do. This is NCO business. You let them figure it out." And sure enough, 20 minutes later, they were both smoking and joking outside. They'd worked through it. That's just how it goes, right? So it was one of those times where it was me influencing and let me tell you, everybody in the room was watching. Everyone. They were watching to see what I did. They were watching to see what the Navy commander did. And when I was calm, cool, and collect, everybody else was calm, cool, and collect too. And don't think for one second that those two senior NCOs didn't hear what I said to them, because they did. And they realized that they heard a senior officer saying, "You guys figured this out, and then come back to me when you guys have a plan." And I said it in a way that they heard it, carried it out, and away we went, right? And from that moment on, I can tell you that I had the respect of both those NCOs, because I not only was respecting their situation, but I was respecting their rank as well. And that's a big part of it. So there's not just one recipe for command presence. Sometimes it is just situational, and you play the situation the way your gut tells you to play it. But in every instance, it is about physical presence. Hopefully that helps.
Yes. So command presence, people can use this military, other areas. What's your tip if people want to develop this?
Well, I think it's three things, right? The first one is you have to be an expert at what you do, because being an expert in your field gives you the confidence to be able to be upfront and be a leader, right? Not everybody's meant to be a leader. You have to know yourself well enough to know if you're a leader or not a leader. And then the third piece of it is, if you do accept a leadership role, be a leader, be upfront. Don't ask your people to do anything you wouldn't do. Don't sit back in the rear and blame other people when things go wrong. Get out front and fix it. A lot of times leading from the front and setting the example, we don't say those things for no reason. We say those things because it matters. And leading by example goes a long ways towards having command presence.
Yes. Wow. Well, thank you so much for explaining command presence.
You're welcome.